insult anybody, but okay. So we started talking last week about how when you come out of Emunah and you come into Bitachon, the result should be an increase in adrenaline function. That was the idea. That confidence, self-confidence, especially, is or can be measured in a sense by how much adrenaline a person has. Right? That's what we talked about last week.
Wow.
That the types of confidence they relate to the two kidneys. And specifically, we mentioned this, that the difference between faith and confidence is that from faith, which is in the crown, you come down to knowledge, which is the conscious faculty of the crown. And the knowledge has a direct line, today we would call it the hormonal system. So it's like a triangle, and we mentioned it last week that it's talked about in body, mind, and soul a lot. There's a lot of discussion there of this triangle between the conscious mind and the adrenal glands on the kidneys. So we said that as a thought, that one way to measure, to see if the purging of faith, that there's only Hashem and everything is good, has worked for you. So in that state you're very calm, and then when you come out of it, you feel very energized, very excited to do. And it's a good type of adrenaline. Meaning we said it's not the adrenaline that comes as a result of fear or something that startled you or some kind of danger. Rather, it's the energizing aspect. It's much more.
You mean adrenaline is released even if it's not from fear?
Yes, of course. Adrenaline has to be released. A healthy body, I think, releases about 5 milligrams a day.
Wow.
Or 10 milligrams a day. And somewhere between 5 and 10. People whose adrenal glands are atrophied have to take some kind of hormone in order to replace what's not coming out of the adrenal glands. But in any case, you need this in order to function well. And when you come out of a state of emunah, where everything you felt was very good, then the result is this feeling of being energized, being with strength, with confidence, that I can now act and do something.
You mentioned Avram Avinu,
Right. Well, we said that when after Avram had faith in Hashem, and faith there meant that he said to Hashem, whatever you do for me, whether I have a son or I don't have a son, however it turns out, it's all good, and I have faith in you that everything will be fine. When he comes out of that, he asks, Bama Eida Ki Rashena, how will I know that I will inherit this land? And to inherit the land, it's not enough to have faith, you have to have confidence, you have to have the two forms of victory and acknowledgement, Netzach and Hod, the 2 feet. You have to be planted firmly on the ground. And for that he says, how will I know? And the know, Bame Eida, the Eida is actually equal to Bitachon. We said that was the triangle between Da'at, knowing is Eida, how will I know? And the 2 faculties of confidence, the 2 kidneys. What we also mentioned was that a measure of confidence is a measure of how well your kidneys work.
Wow.
And what do we mean by that, by how well your kidneys work? So we said that there's a lot of confusion regarding what it means when, for instance, the sages say that the kidneys give eitzah, they give some kind of advice. Whereas we know the kidneys as things that only clean, detox the blood. And if the kidneys don't work, then you can get dialysis, and it's not an easy thing to do to clean the blood. So spiritually, the kidneys do the same thing. They're cleaning something, some toxicity in the blood, in the person's will, and what he wants. Blood is will. It's one of the most important things that we haven't discussed yet so much. Torah says, "V'adam hu nefesh." Right. V'adam hu nefesh. That blood is the psyche, the nefesh. But nefesh in Hebrew means ratzon. It means to want something. Im yeshet nafshechem. If you would like, if you would want. So so the blood itself is the will.
Wow.
That's why we talked a lot about seething, about the seething waters, right? That the blood boils over, as it were, when a person is full of this demand to do something that he can't control. He feels like he's Esav. He needs to do. He can't sit still. He has to pursue his craving. He has to pursue the thing that he's looking for. So the kidneys clean the will, as it were.
Wow.
So that's the topic that we want to get into more today. How victory and acknowledgement, Netzach and Hod, how they act to cleanse the person's will, what he wants to do, his hidden will even the things that he doesn't know that he wants to do. And the cleaner that a person is, in terms of how the kidneys function well, so the will to do, the confidence to do, is more energized, stronger. Yeah.
How does one, I mean, you might have explained this already, but what's the process of cleaning oneself? Is that what you've been saying until now, basically, or?
No, we haven't talked about that yet.
Oh, so you're going to get into
We're
the
saying
cleaning part.
that the more a person has concrete direction in life, the more there's a need to cleanse the will. The will has to be immaculate, meaning En li el ratzon la'avi shebashamayim, like Rashbi said. My whole life I've only been bonded to one will. B'chad ktira itkatarna. Ktira is like it means, no, ktira there is like a ktoret. It's like an incense, like incense that goes up. But the meaning is kesher. I've only been bonded to one bond. What's my bond? The one thing I wanted to cling to Hashem. That's all. Achat shalti me'et Hashem, like David HaMelech also says. I've only asked for one thing, to be with Hashem. So that will has to be clean. The cleaner it is, the better. Meaning, the better the kidneys are functioning spiritually, to cleanse the will. The more faith and the more confidence, active and passive, the person has. So this goes together. It's like a feedback cycle. It keeps feeding itself. The cleaner the will, the more there's confidence that I can do what I can do. So to understand this, so now we talked about this a few weeks ago. We mentioned it in passing because it's also related to Sfira Somer. It was especially related to Pesach. But today we'll talk about it explicitly. So explicitly, this all has to do with what caused the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. What caused the destruction of the temple? The first one. So, in the introduction to Eicha, the Medrash Rabbah has 30 different openings. Meaning how the Chachamim, how the different sages opened their learning on Eicha, on Lamentations. And almost the last one, the 30th one, I think it's not the last one because there's one after, maybe it's 31 then. It reads like this. This I didn't find a translation, and I didn't have time to translate it myself, so I'll just translate it now. It reads like this: Arba melachim hayu, ma shetava ze lo tava ze. There were 4 kings in the house of David, and what one requested, the other didn't request. They each made requests to Hashem, and it's not just a request; it's like a demand. They demanded something from Hashem. So with demand, you hear a lot of self-confidence, right? I can make a demand from Hashem. Where do you get that? How do you do that? So you have a strong demand because you believe very firmly that you're doing Hashem's will, that this is what Hashem wants. So I'm demanding from you to cooperate, as it were, okay? As much as a human being can demand. But the demand comes from the strength of one's confidence. And these 4 kings were David, and Asa, Yoshaphat, and Chizkiyahu. There's a lot to be talked about all of this, but we want to get to the point. So David Amal, David, when he went out to war with Amalek, he said, "Erdof oivai v'asigem lo ashuv et kolotam." I will chase my enemies, I will pursue them, and I will overtake them, and I won't return until I destroy them, until I annihilate them. That's David's demand. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu ani oseh ken. So Hashem agreed with him. Meaning he's saying this to Hashem. What's he saying to Hashem? We said last week. It's almost like he's telling Hashem, stand aside. Don't get involved.
Wow.
And I want to do this by myself. It's like a child who's finished training wheels. And now he says to his father, stand aside, I want to ride the bike by myself. Don't help me. Because Hashem can help him. What do you mean help him? Help him miraculously. He doesn't want any miracles. He wants to do it himself. If Hashem helps you, so it's like the infinite coming into the finite in a miraculous way. In a way that's not... But the goal of life is to get to the point where Hashem enters into you naturally. Well, it doesn't feel like a miracle. Rebbe always used to discuss this, that the highest miracle is the miracle that can't be seen, that nobody feels, that it feels natural.
That's the highest miracle?
Good.
Teva.
Again, when it looks like Purim. Nobody saw a miracle. It looks like it was just business as usual in the palace. One day they want to kill the Jews, the other day they don't want to kill the Jews. So, no miracles involved. From the outside, after a perspective of many years, you understand that there was a miracle here. But initially, it feels like there's something natural going on. It's just the natural progression of life. So David, he wants it to be entirely natural. I'm going to pursue my enemies, I'm going to overtake them, and I won't return until I annihilate them. A descendant of his, Asa, says, he also had to fight a war. And in his war he said, Ani ein bi koach la'arog lehem, ela ani rodef otam ve'ata oseh. So Asa said, I will pursue them, I'll overtake them, but I don't know how to kill. So you kill them. So the actual killing is not me. That I don't. My troops don't know how to do that. I don't know how to give them the strength to actually kill. But I do know how to give them the strength to pursue. This I know. So Hashem said to him, Amar lo ani oseh, and he did as he wanted. And it says that in the end, there were stones that came down from heaven and killed the. No, it says vayiplu lifnei Hashem, that they fell before God. It doesn't say that they fell in the hands of Asa and his troops. The third king is Yehoshaphat, and he says, "Ani en bi koach lo la'arog velo lirdov, ela ani omer shira v'ata oseh." He said, "I don't have strength neither to pursue nor to kill. I can't do either of these. What do I know how to do? I know how to get everybody to sing." So we talked about this, that orchestration in Hebrew is the same word as to be victorious, lenatzeach. So the conductor is really a victor. And the best name for a conductor is not Zubin Mehta, but Victor Mehta. He should have changed his name, but he didn't know. So, what?
Conductor, this young guy, what's his name? Lahav.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's his name,
he's
really?
taking over. Yeah, Lahav.
So Lahav is equal to
Shabi?
37,
Shabi?
Taken over what?
and that's Hevel. The same letters as Hevel.
Of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, and he's like 30 years old.
So his name is it says Moshe Rabbeinu. Before he was Moshe Rabbeinu, he was Hevel. The same letters as Lav. And Moshe Rabbeinu is victory. He's Netzach. So maybe that's where he gets it from. In any case, if that's his name. So Yehoshaphat says, I don't have strength I can only orchestrate. Meaning I'm a good general, but not on the field. Not on the battlefield. I'm a good general when it comes to an army of singers. So like the Levites. So and basically that's what we talked about a few weeks ago, that's called milchamot nufa. That the rectified form of war is to go to war using music. It's the highest form of warfare. It's very spiritual. Like we said, that you can conquer everything today with music. So that's what he did. So he got the Levim to sing, and I guess he composed new music. And thanks to this, all his enemies were vanquished. And then came Chizkiyahu. ואמר, אני אין בי כוח לא להרוג ולא לרדוף ולא לומר שירה. I don't have strength neither to pursue, nor to kill, nor even to orchestrate, to say the song that needs to be said. אלא אני ישן על מיטתי, all I can do is go to sleep on my bed, ואתה עושה. And you, Hashem, will do everything. אמר לו הקדוש ברוך הוא אני עושה. And indeed, Hashem said, I will do. So to go to sleep when, according to the Pshat, you're surrounded by 185,000 troops from Assyria, and according to Chazal, those were just the officers. So there were a few million. And they're all on Yerushalayim. And this guy, he can go to sleep. Now it's time to, okay, he puts on his pajamas and his little nightcap. And he can actually sleep. That's incredible, what we call passive confidence. That's incredible, how a person can do that. So he had some confidence. It was very passive. Hashem, you'll do everything. When they woke up in the morning, as we learned, and Rashi says there in Isaiah in chapter 30, that the songs were sung by the angels. The angels sang the same songs. They conquered this Assyrian army with music, and everybody laid dead, except for, and then there's a few different versions, but all of them agree that Nebuchadnezzar, the man who eventually destroyed the temple, was left over from this great Assyrian army. He was apparently some kind of officer there. And he wasn't an Assyrian himself. He was a Babylonian. But he liked, I guess he was some kind of mercenary. And he was left over, and he eventually destroyed the temple. So really this Medrash is trying to explain, that's how the Medrash starts, why the temple was destroyed. Why was it destroyed? Because the level of active confidence kept coming down. Until the point where by Chizkiyahu's children already are the generation by whom the temple was destroyed.
Why didn't David go out and do it?
He wasn't there. He's long dead.
You were just describing that as.
And this is all over a period of 300 years. So David's the first king in the house of David, and Chizkiyahu is not the last, but he's near the last. He's the last one who's autonomous. And after that, Babylon begins to force the hand of the southern kingdom, and they become a protectorate and so on.
So that's the lowest, Chizkiyahu.
So Chizkiyahu is like the lowest, and from then on it's just the destruction of the temple. That's how the Medrash ends. It says that Nebuchadnezzar survived. And when you say that somebody who survived something like this, what you're saying is that he was forged out of the passive confidence or the lack of active confidence of the Jewish people. So he's like a remnant. He's what comes out when you take the essence of what does it mean not to have any active confidence. You get Nebuchadnezzar.
Well, we're going to get somebody pretty bad pretty soon.
Hmm?
We're going to get somebody pretty bad pretty soon.
Oh.
Being forged out of all the passive confidence around here.
Well, no.
She's comparing to the situation today in politics.
So
You're not supposed to say.
So this
negative
is the story.
That's right.
And what is the story saying? It's saying that as you lose your confidence, you become weaker. It's not so it's not so surprising. That's what I would have thought. Except that the story here doesn't deal at all with what was the reason that they lost their confidence. Why did they lose their active confidence? Why was it that David could pursue his enemies and say to Hashem, don't make me any miracles. I'll do it all the natural way.
You said it because he had no sins.
So we said last week, so now we want to read it in the Mesilat Yesharim. And this is the beginning of looking at a sugya. Again, in Chazal, in the sages, they don't tell you that there's a something underlying this whole story. They just tell you there's 4 stages here, and you have to guess, or you have to figure out what is driving the story. Why are they losing active confidence? What's going on here? So the first one to point to something psychological apparently is the Ramchal in Mesilat Yesharim. So that's what we're going to learn now. And to learn it, we need to have a general idea of what Mesilat Yesharim is about. So I just brought from the introduction first. Mesilat Yesharim wants to create or tell you how to, it's really a Musar book, it wants to tell you how to be a good person. Like how should your midos be? How should your attributes of the heart, the way you conduct yourself, how should all this be? And he bases it on something very basic. So he writes like this: behold, all of these general principles require lengthy explanation. Because there's many things that I found. He needs to have a structure to his book. So he says there's many principles found in the sages about how a person should rectify his midos, his character traits. So each one of them requires a lengthy explanation. I have found that our sages of blessed memory have encompassed all of these divisions in different words arranged according to the order of steps needed to properly acquire them. So his guiding principle is going to be one particular saying that encompasses, like he's going to explain now, all the stages. It's like a process. It's very like the Baal Shem Tov, that there's a process of how to acquire good character traits. It's not just you work on this, you work on that, whatever comes to mind. There's a process to it. And where is this found? It was taught in a Braita, meaning in a Mishnah that's not in the Mishnah, and cited in several places in the Talmud. And there are different variants to the reading of this Braita. With slight differences. And one of these, the one that he's going to take, is Lifnei Dehen, before their festivals. It's the second chapter of Avodah Zarah. And there it writes like this: from here Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair derived from the verse, you shall guard yourself from everything evil. Torah brings to watchfulness, zehirut. Watchfulness brings to zeal, to zrizut. Zeal brings to cleanliness, which is nekiyut. Cleanliness brings to separation. Separation brings to purity. Purity brings to piety. Piety brings to humility. Humility brings to fear of sin. Fear of sin brings to holiness. Holiness brings to the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit brings to the revival of the dead. And we're going to talk about revival of the dead in a person. We've talked about it a little bit, but not enough yet.
What was the first one? Watchfulness?
Zehirut. So we're only going to get up to the third one. The third one is cleanliness. In general, for each one of these, he dedicates 3 chapters. First, to explain what it is, how you get to it, and what prevents it. That's basically how the Mesilat Yesharim is built.
Should
So
we
now
read
let's-
cleanliness, separation, and purity as the 3, are those 3 stages lumped into that?
No, altogether there's
Regular-
10 stages here.
No, but the one that we're used to, separation, sweetening.
Oh,
is
no.
that- It's not.
It doesn't follow this. It's not the same idea. I mean, you could, obviously, in some way parallel them, but you'd have to work hard. So let's read what he says about cleanliness. Cleanliness is that a man be completely clean of all bad traits and all sins. So right away, it's like, if you're clean of that, so what else do you need to do? But the understanding here is that to be clean is not the same thing as to be actively good. It's just to be clean of anything that's negative. Right?
It's passive.
Right.
Okay.
This applies not only for sins which are familiar and recognized, but also for those to which one's heart is enticed to rationalize that it is permissible. So we're saying that this is all the kidneys function, the spiritual function of the kidneys. So the kidneys are very much part of the thought process, but they're like a second thought process, that I've rationalized that it's okay to do so and so. I've already gotten used to the fact that I do so and so, and it's okay to say this.
Uh-huh.
It's okay to do that. Why? Because there's all these lenient circumstances. So I've rationalized it. The function of the kidneys, he doesn't connect it to the kidneys at all. He's not connecting it to the kidneys. But as we'll see, he very much connects it to our medrash. So Chassidus here completes the picture, meaning you're right. It's cleanliness. How does cleanliness come about? For the kidneys, the spiritual function of the kidneys. So what is it? It's to get rid of all the bad traits and all the sins, even the ones that I've rationalized. But when we truthfully examine, and here we see that the kidneys are related to truth in the sense, not whether it's true or false, but rather whether it really stands, like the feet. When we truthfully examine the matter, we find that it appeared to the person justified only because his heart was afflicted by some desire and not entirely purified of it. Therefore, it pulled him to be lenient. So we see that the heart affected the judgment. But the man was completely purified from this affliction and has been cleansed of all trace of evil, which lust leaves behind it. Meaning, first, now he's giving an interesting interpretation of what it means. Halev chomed. Usually it's the ein chomedet that the heart wants something, and then the eye pursues it. So he says here, the eye here, we're not talking about the eye itself, we're talking about the fact that when a person lusts for something, there's a remnant to that lust. Meaning, even, Chazal say, that even to think about doing an Avera is worse than actually doing it. Why? Because when you actually do it, you can do tshuva.
Wow.
But if you don't do it and you only lusted for it, so it leaves a residue in the heart, and this residue later unknowingly taints your judgment. So because you wanted something very much, you're more inclined later on to let that lust affect how you judge yourself or how you think about whether certain things are okay to pursue or not. And it clouds your judgment. Which lust leaves behind it. Behold, his vision will be perfectly clear. But if a person cleanses of all trace of evil, then his vision, and here vision is his judgment. So again, he's understanding the verse in the Torah, Lo taturu achei levavchem v'achei einechem, after your heart, and then after your eyes, not just, because usually it should be the other way around. But first you see something, then you lust after it. So why does the Torah say first your heart wants it and then your eyes are afflicted by it? So he says here, because it doesn't mean the eyes themselves, it means the eyes as a symbol for judgment. The judges are called Einei Hayada. They're called the eyes of the congregation. It's a symbol. So he's taking the pasuk and he's explaining that symbolically it means that the lust that's left over in the residue in the heart now affects and clouds the judgment. We'll see this much later when we talk about the whole process of what's called conscious determination, that the inner vision of a person is clouded if they don't do the faith well, meaning they don't purge all their different thoughts. Here, like what we said is that by purging all the thoughts, by going up to Emunah, that's like the ultimate, the strongest form of cleansing out the body and everything from all my different lusts and thoughts and whatever else I have. But here it's very simple. He will not be swayed by any desire. So if a person is able to cleanse himself in the heart, he won't be swayed by any desire. He will recognize anything which is a sin. Now notice it's in the heart. What do the kidneys cleanse? The blood. I mean, it doesn't say that they cleanse the mind. They cleanse the blood. So he's cleansing the residue left over in the heart from what a person has lusted for. He will recognize anything which is a sin, so he won't be tainted, he won't be prejudiced. Even for the most minuscule, he will see its evil. The most minuscule sin, he'll be able to recognize it and will distance himself from it. And this our sages referred regarding the men of Shlemut, okay, who purify their deeds to such a great extent as to leave not even a stirring of evil. And they described it, and lo and behold, the clean-minded men of Jerusalem. How do you say this in Hebrew? Nikiyei hada'at shebirushalayim. The da'at, like Avram said, Bama eida ki rashena. How will I know? How will I have clean? This guy, he's explaining to us, clean knowledge. How will I come to this level of having clean knowledge? We said it's a feedback loop. The knowledge awakens the kidneys, and the kidneys cleanse the blood, awakening and cleaning the knowledge further, and it just keeps getting good. So when Avram is saying, how will I know that I will be able to conquer it, the land of Israel, he's saying, because I need to know that my progeny, they'll have enough confidence to actually come and conquer it. Did they really conquer it?
Almost.
Not really. They didn't really conquer it. They never did what Hashem told them to do. Because they didn't have enough confidence. Who would have given them enough confidence? Who's the most confident of everybody?
David.
Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, he is victory.
Yeah,
he is
God
Netzach.
was determined to not
That's
let
why
him
it says
to do
that
that.
Moshe Rabbeinu would come in and they would.
Yeah, and it would be so. In fact, they'd be so confident that it says that there wouldn't have been a single war. Everybody would just run away. Because you see such determination. What can you do against this? It would have packed up and left. And you don't have to make war with them. There's not a mitzvah to destroy them. There's a mitzvah to make them leave the land. That's all. You don't have to kill them. So such incredible confidence, they would have just, all the Canaanite nations would just have packed up and said, you're right. We see that God is with you.
It's too much din, no?
What do you mean?
It's too much gvura.
It's not gula, it's confidence. Wise. So these are called the Nikiyei Adat B'Yerushalayim. The person who's whole, who's complete, is a person whose knowledge, whose consciousness is clean of any kind of lust after some hidden, even a hidden lust after something that's forbidden, that's not good. You can now see the distinction between the watchful and the clean man, meaning the Zahir and the Naki. Even though both are similar in their matters, the watchful is cautious in his deeds and sees to it that he does not sin in what he already knows and which is familiar to everyone that it is a sin. So he says the watchful man is the person who makes sure that his conscious acts are okay, they're good. But what he calls here the clean man is somebody who can not only ensure that his conscious acts are good, but also his subconscious. He ensures that his subconscious is cleansed from any kind of prejudice for the negative. So this is a very big, this is like an awakening of the subconscious. That's what he's saying here. And remember the Ramchal, he's writing this in the early 18th century, 1720. No, even before. What am I talking about? 1680. Something like that. Baal Shem Tov was born in 1699. He's before the Baal Shem Tov by about 50 years.
He had to run away.
So we're talking about, he also ran, he has a lot of stories. He died when he was 38. He was an Italian scholar. And basically what he's doing here is he's opening the doorway to psychology. He's telling you that you can't judge a person, you can't heal a person if you only look at the conscious actions. Because that's watchfulness. But to be clean means to also have a sensitivity to what's going on beneath the surface. So today people come and say, well, if you open up beneath the surface, you don't know what you're going to find. Settled. That's the lessening of the generations. But back then, he could say, or at least in the time of the sages, in the Second Temple, the word Nikiyei Adat Shebul Shneim, were men of clean knowledge, clean consciousness, which meant, according to him, that their subconscious was clean. But he is still not master over himself to keep his heart, meaning the watchful man, is still not master over himself to keep his heart from being pulled by natural lusts, so that they do not sway him to rationalize that certain things are permitted regarding things whose evil is not so well known. For even though he strives to conquer his evil inclination to subdue its lusts, he will not change his nature because of this. He will not be able to remove bodily lust from his heart. So he's saying that this stuff is exactly what we call nefesh ha'behemit. The animal soul is the natural soul. It's bodily lust. And like the Tanya begins, and he says that the animal soul, which has all these lusts, it is the body's life force. It is what keeps the body alive. To cleanse that, the Tanya comes in and he puts it in different language. He says there's a divine soul and an animal soul. And the animal soul is subconscious. Most of it is underwater.
Wow.
You don't see most of it. It's like an iceberg. So you have to learn how to work with the animal soul, but most of the things that you thought were good, when you begin to take a strong and hard and deep look at it, you suddenly see, wait a minute, this iceberg is not very clean. It's not fresh water underneath. So that's the beginning of psychology.
What year is this?
I think it's 1680, 1670. Unfortunately, not so good with dates. He will not be able to remove bodily lust from his heart. He will at most be able to subdue it and be governed by wisdom instead of it. So what is subduing it is what we call behaviorism. Then on the outside, he's at least subduing it, but he can't remove it on the inside. But nevertheless,
Jerome died in 1746.
he died in 1746, so he wrote this in 1720, so it was right the first time.
Not 16.
So how does that work? Because the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov was born in 1699, so
98.
98, right? Now I think in the English, it was 16. Okay, so 1698, and so he was. Does it say when he wrote it? He wrote two versions of the Mesilat Yesharim. Because the version that everybody learns is this one that we're
1707, according to Wikipedia, 1707 to 1746.
Okay.
He was quite young when he died.
According to them, he was 39. He wrote two versions of it. There was an early version and a late version. Everybody learns from the late version. There was an early version, was like a debate. And Avivi published it 20 years ago. It wasn't so well known. In any case, but after a man habituates himself to a great extent in watchfulness, and he says himself, Yitragel, this is all about Hirgelim. It sounds a lot like Tanya, that you can only control your actions. But what does the Tanya want you to do? And Tanya goes a step further. It says you can change the animal soul. You have to work at that level. And even if you're not able ever to change it, how do you change it? By meditating. Right? All these bonus in the Tanya is for what? For the mind, meaning the divine soul, to give birth to new faculties of the heart. And even if you can't do that, says the Tanya, I think in chapter 17, so he says there's something called Ta'alumot Chokhmah. Just the very fact that you want, will by itself, is able to give birth to something. Even if you don't have the mind to actually sit down on a mimer of Chassidus and work on it. Just the fact that you want to, even if you didn't understand it. It also works. It also functions to change slowly the faculties of the heart, not just to habituate them. And in the end, he says, and never give up. I'm talking about the Tanya now. Never give up, because Hashem sees your efforts. And even though you yourself may not be able to complete the transformation, Hashem will complete it for you. And it will either be done by Him giving you a whole new soul, or that a soul of a tzaddik will enter into you. And you will have added strength from somewhere that you didn't have innately. So that's the time. Tanya goes a step further. Here he just says habituation. Till he has cleansed himself, a first cleansing of the well-known sins, and has habituated himself in the service of God with zeal. That's the watchful man, the zahir, and so on.
Can you get a new soul in the same life?
Okay.
Wow.
And yearning to his Creator after he's done all this, and yearning to his Creator has grown strong within him, behold, the power of this habituation will distance him from physical matters and cling his intellect towards spiritual perfection. And eventually he will be able to attain perfect cleanliness. He doesn't say here how. The fire of bodily lust will extinguish from his heart due to the intensifying within him of the yearning to God. Then his sight will be clear, like we said, his judgment. His sight here means his judgment. And pure, as I wrote earlier, so that he will not be seduced nor deceived by the darkness of the physical, and his deeds will be completely clean. Okay, so that's the description. That's a psychological description, or they call it how the psyche works. Now he's going to tell us where did he learn all this from. So here it is. On possessing this trait, David would rejoice, saying, meaning on being cleansed, he said, I will wash my hands in cleanliness, and I will go around your altar. Meaning that to circle the altar is the result of cleanliness, of being able to not only control my conscious decisions, but to get rid of my hidden evil, even the lusts that have taken root inside my heart. For in truth, only he who is completely clean from any trace of sin or iniquity is fit to appear before the presence of the king. That's what it means that he went around the altar. How can he go around the altar? He's not a Kohen. Between the altar and Seder. So when you do this, and Sukkot, you go around. So everybody goes around. You're allowed to. That area, it's not very big. It's about 3 meters wide. 4 meters maybe. And when they did the circling of the Mizbeach with the lulav and etrog, on Sukkot, everybody went around. So one of the things to think about, and this is a whole meditation in and of itself, is that what we're doing with the 4 species is attaining cleanliness. That's the idea. That's why we shake it in all the directions. The 6 directions that we're shaking, they correspond to the emotions of the heart. And it's to remove, so everybody says, oh, this is like witchcraft. Because the Gemara even says, this is to remove evil spirits and negative do's, klalim, they're called.
What?
Do's. Do.
Do?
D-E-W. Negative spirits, bad spirits, and so it sounds like, what are we doing? Witchcraft?
You mean dew that's on the ground, dew?
No.
Apparently.
But we're not,
No,
we're not,
D-E-W.
we're not
Spirits
bringing in the
and-
positive,
and
we're
bring-
getting rid of the negative.
Getting rid of them.
Remove negative spirits and
Do.
Do's.
Klalim is the
remove
word,
the
but that's
dew?
curses, right?
What? Klalim.
Is it curses?
No, it's Uchot Rot v'Klalim Leim. That's the language of the Gemara.
And that's the word for do?
That's what we're so Klalim is a very hard word. In Hebrew, that's what it means. In Aramaic, if you take it into Aramaic, so it's like the sukkah is called a talia. So it gets more confusing because I'm not sure what it is. The idea is very simple behind the whole thing. Is that in the past, we talked about this many times, the way that negative spirits were treated was as if they were something external to the person. It's like a demon that came into the person. Really, what does it mean? It means that there's a part of you that you're not in control of. Here's something very important, a very important image that I heard this week, and I thought that whoever wrote it down didn't write it down, because the person who said it probably said it more correctly than it was written down. When you read a book, there's a lot of, we've talked about this 100 times, but when you read a book, there's a lot of characters in the book. Each character, from the point of view of the person who's reading the book, is a different character. And what makes a book good? If the characters are well developed, and they don't just seem to be a copy and paste of the other ones, right? So we talked about this in dreaming. When you dream, a dream is powerful and leaves an impression on you when you realize that it's not you dreaming, when you feel that it's real. What makes it real? What makes this scene real? That I can't read any of your minds. I don't know what you're thinking. You're not an extension of me. You're real people. So when you read a book and the characters are well developed enough that you as the reader can't guess, or maybe you can, sometimes maybe being able to guess makes it more real, but you can't see into their minds. They surprise you. They're like real people. When you're dreaming, what's happening? Are there really other people in your dream? So we said this 100 times, right? There's nobody in your dream. It's only you. So how is it possible that the characters in your dream are a riddle as far as you're concerned? In a good dream, you don't know what they're thinking. They act autonomously. How is the mind able to do that? Because that's the nature of mind. You can't think about mind the way you think about coffee. You can't think about, if I take the coffee and I break it up into 15 different parts, each part is going to be exactly like the first part. But the mind, when it divides up, each part becomes autonomous by definition. It has the capacity to be autonomous. It has the capacity to have a separate consciousness, as it were, a subset of everything that was inside. You see that in waking when an author writes a book. So he guides each one of the characters separately, builds each one separately. It's all the author's mind. From the author's point of view, the whole book is happening where? In his head. He's just committing it to writing, making it into something that you can share. It's like I'm sharing your dream. Basically what a book is, or a novel. Is there a hero to a novel? What's the difference between the hero and all the other characters? What makes how do you identify the hero of a book?
You mean the main character?
The one who gets redemption.
What if he doesn't?
He's gotta be more developed.
You know, in the books I read, he
More
always gets
developed.
redemption.
He's got more everything.
More what? Focus. Meaning focus, what do you mean? Everything's focused on him in the end. The story is about him or her. Sometimes there's more than one person, but in the end, that's what the story is about. Everything revolves around that main character, that hero, whoever the hero of the book is. A lot of times, if not always, and if you can do that it's not that way, you're an exceptional writer. The hero, the main character, is an extension of the author. It's a projection of the author. The author projects himself into the main character in some way. That's why they always tell you can only write about things that you know about. It's very hard to write about something you don't know about. And if you don't know about it, and if you want to write about a topic that you don't know, you really have to research. And you have to get so deeply into it that you and that topic are one thing. Otherwise, you won't be able to write about it. So now, without getting into what this means for us relative to Hashem, because Hashem has also written a book called The World, right? There's the main character. Who's the main character of this book? Mashiach.
Mashiach?
It's very important to know that the main character is the Mashiach. It's not Stam. If you feel that you've recognized who Mashiach is, you feel that everything is revolving around him. That's the interpretation of the Arizal's, the whole picture of the line and the circle around it when it comes to society in the Arizal. That the Kav is the Mashiach, is the soul of the Mashiach. And all the circles or the worlds, the Kav is the soul of the Mashiach, and all the worlds around him are like all the characters around the main character in a novel. Imagine that somebody would say, I have the best novel in the world, but I don't have a main character. I don't know what that is. That becomes a nonsensical novel. Like, it's not about anything. It's not that all the different storylines are not important. They're very nice and important. But nothing ties everything together. So there has to be something that ties everything together. That's what I call the Mashiach. So put that aside for a second. In the person, in the individual, you also have your spark of Mashiach. What's your spark of Mashiach? It's your Kav. It's your purpose, your mission in life. Everything has to revolve around that. Everything that you do. Otherwise, there's no main character. You have to have a spark of Mashiach. You have to have a main character in you. The main character has even what we call antagonists. There are parts of the psyche that restrict him, that try to fight him. They go against him. They oppose him. They're antagonistic. But it makes sense if there's a main character. If you don't have a main character, then, as I just heard Jordan Peterson say, life is only painful. But there's no redemption in it. When I say redemption, I mean that there's a reason why it's worth it going through all this difficulty and suffering. There's a reason why it's okay to even suffer from my own antagonism, my self-antagonism. And the amazing thing is, it's a verse. Birtzot Hashem darchei ish gam oivav yashliminu. That when Hashem wants the path of a man, meaning that when you found your path, when you know what you're doing, why you're in the world, then even your enemies will make peace with you. It doesn't say your enemies will be your lovers. They will love you from now on. No, they remain your enemies, but they make peace with you. Because they also have a part in the story. They're part of this wholeness.
You just said that they are opposing you.
They're opposing you. So they stop opposing you, but they're still your enemies. But you learn how to live with them. You learn how to make a truce. You learn how to make peace even.
Weird.
When you find your Mashiach inside you, your spark of Mashiach, you find what your mission is, even those things that were antagonistic begin to play a role. They're also part of the story. It becomes a whole story. And no story is good if there's no antagonist. You can't just have a protagonist. It doesn't work. It's not interesting. But if you don't know where you're going, if you have no kav, if you have no derech, if you have no path, no mission, so all you're doing is suffering from others and mostly from yourself. But you have to find that main character. And when you find that main character, everything else makes sense.
So we shouldn't even be our own main characters, or we should make Mashiach our main character?
Your mission is your main character. Your mission in life is your main.
Isn't
That's
it
what you
to
have to
reveal-
identify with.
That takes it away. Just like, if you know it's Hashem, revealing Hashem. We just spent the last class talking about revealing Hashem. Now it sounds like we
But each
reveal
person has a
Mashiach.
different way of revealing Hashem.
Is revealing Mashiach revealing Hashem?
Mashiach is the power, is the character inside you that's able to do this. Again, the spark of Mashiach that you have, not the full Mashiach, but whatever line you're bringing down now into the world, whatever ray of light, of infinite light that's turning into finite light that you're working on right now, thanks to your confidence and so on, your loins, and all that. That's what your spark of Mashiach is now.
And could we say the antagonists are the doubts, perhaps, that
So the-
undermine that spark within us?
Right. So the antagonists in the past, they were seen as really enemies, foreign enemies who have who've become intruders in your psyche. So the picture of them was like evil spirits, demons. But really, says the Ramchal, and he's the beginning of the modern thinking about this, is that there's nothing that's attacked you from the outside. These are simply and merely residues of your own lusts. And that's what you cleanse. So says David, I walk around your Mizbeach on Sukkos with my 4 species, and the fact that I'm shaking them, and you shake them in the middle, that's exactly what you do in the middle of Hallel when you walk around with them. Not exactly when you do around, but you cleanse yourself before you can walk around. And you cleanse the emotional faculties from these evil spirits. And in the time of David, maybe that's how they saw it. That it's like something separate from you, came from the outside and invaded. In us, these demons are just ourselves. It's those parts of the story that don't make any sense because I haven't found my axis. I haven't found what everything revolves around. And that's why this is the picture of cleanliness. When you have cleanliness, you can go around the Mizbeach. You can see Hashem as if you're going around Him, meaning you found the central axis that everything is revolving around in your life. And that gives you direction, it gives you strength, it gives you confidence. And most of all, it gives you it gives you wholeness. You become Nikiyeh Yadat Shebirushalayim. So the sages of blessed memory, along these lines, still have to go back some more. For in truth, so we're like on line 8 on the second page. Only he who is completely clean from any trace of sin or iniquity is fit to appear before the presence of the King, God. For without this, he has only to feel shame and disgrace before him, as Ezra the scribe said, "Oh my God, I am ashamed and embarrassed to lift up my face to you, for our iniquities have increased over our head." And over our head means that I can't judge things properly. Certainly, it requires great work to attain shlemut, perfection in this trait. For the recognized and well-known sins are easy to guard from their evil, for their evil is apparent. But the scrutiny which is necessary for cleanliness is the most difficult. For the sin is concealed by rationalizations that it is permitted, as I wrote, and as the sages of blessed memory said, the sins which a man treads with his heels surround him at the time of judgment. So you think they're surrounding him at the time of judgment someday when Hashem judges the entire world. So he'll come and he'll judge you about all the small things that you did because you rationalized. But says Ramchal, again, this is the beginning of Jewish psychology, he says, no. Every time you come to judge whether something is permitted or not, these small sins that you tread over with your heel, averot she'adam dash ba'kevav. And why is it with your heel? Because it's the end of the netzach and hod. It's the end of the kidneys, if you want. They haven't been able to clean it. So it surrounds you and it clouds your judgment every time you come to decide whether you should do something or not. Not when Hashem will judge you, when you come to judge something. Along these lines, they said, the majority of people are guilty of forms of theft. Okay? It's called the gezer. A minority in immorality, miutam ba'arayot. I don't know why they called it immorality, but it's improper sexual conduct. But all are guilty of the dust of slander. And everybody is guilty of avak lashon hara, which means small slander, little lashon hara, that you think is okay. And that itself clouds your judgment all the time. For due to its extremely fine details, all human beings stumble in what they fail to recognize of it. The sages of blessed memory, now we're coming to this, said David was watchful and cleansed himself completely from all these things. Therefore, now we have the reason he would engage in war with strong trust, confidence in God. Here they're saying in God, but really it's strong confidence in himself. Requesting, may I pursue my enemies and overtake them, not turning back till I have destroyed them. Something not asked by Yehoshaphat, Asa and Chizkiyahu. He's got the order wrong. Asa, Yehoshaphat, and Chizkiyahu. Since they had attained such perfect cleanliness, they had not attained such perfect cleanliness. So now he gives us the missing link here. That the kidneys, again, he doesn't mention the kidneys, but the kidneys which cleanse, the spiritual part of the kidneys which cleanses the blood. What is it cleansing it of? Of lusts that have been left over. You had the lust, you didn't even pursue it, but a residue remained. So if your kidneys cleanse it, then you have active confidence like King David. But if you didn't cleanse it, so then you're like Yehoshaphat, or like Asa. Again, I don't know why he gives this order here. The order is Asa, Yehoshaphat, and then Chizkiyahu. And you lose your active confidence the more and more lust takes over. And again, it doesn't take over in the sense that you actually acted. You're a tzaddik. You never did anything wrong. But because you thought of it, and you didn't cleanse it afterwards, the residue remains, and it clouds your judgment, and that itself is a loss of active confidence. So the kidneys are doing something amazing here. On the one hand, they represent confidence. That's like the top part, the adrenal glands, which is giving you the hormone that causes you to feel confidence. And the lower parts of it, until the part which is called the lowest, dash ba'akiva. Why is it called a kiv? Because again, you have to think about it in parallel. Just as that the kidney here has three parts, the top, which is the adrenal gland, the body, and the heel, which is where the residues are left over. So the leg itself is divided into three parts. That's why you call the lower part the heel, and the kidney you also call the lower part, again spiritually, the lower part is the heel of the kidney. And it's where all this residue of the lust is collecting, and in that sense the kidney is like a heart. It's even called in one place a heart. I don't remember where right now. And the residue collects inside, and it finds it harder and harder to cleanse everything. So if you don't get it out right away, meaning if I felt some lust for something and I don't right away get it out of myself, even though I didn't act upon it, so and I'm not cleansed, so my active confidence, my confidence in myself sinks lower and lower and lower until I come to the point where I can't do anything. The most I can do is I trust you, Hashem. I don't trust myself, but I trust you. So I'll sleep. I can sleep. I know you'll take care of it. That's all passive confidence. But then, because you didn't continue to cleanse, and what was the thing that they lusted after in the first temple? We know. It was all idolatry. So idolatry and Gilui Arayot and Shfichut Damim, they lusted after these things. So eventually, you don't even have passive confidence. And when you don't have passive confidence, that's when Nebuchadnezzar can come and destroy the temple entirely. So that the temple was not destroyed in the time of Chizkiyahu because he still had passive confidence. At least the left kidney was working. But the right kidney wasn't working anymore already. It was so beleaguered by this residue of lust for these sins that he couldn't work anymore. But at least the left kidney worked. But after Chizkiyahu, even the left kidney didn't work anymore. And then when Nebuchadnezzar came, what is the description? That the walls fell into the ground. It's like, in this sense, the kidneys are like the thing that keeps your identity, makes you into a hero of a story. That makes you into something that can actually function. So this is an amazing piece in the Ramchal. The Mamish explains how this whole process works. What time is it?
What time?
10 to 2.
Yeah, I have to. Those are two very different numbers.
10 to 2.
Oh,
You said 1:30.
mine's slow.
Oh, okay. It's 10 to 2. I trust you. Need to know a number that's agreed upon by more
10
than.
to 2.
Okay, so we have to end.
Try that.